Blaine is one of the fastest growing cities in Minnesota, but it's also missing one big thing, which is a real downtown. Well, in case you missed it, they've just launched a $750 million development to try to fix all of that. So today I'm diving into this massive development that's going to change Blaine forever and what it's going to mean for the future of this city. So in case you haven't heard, 69 acres of mostly empty land is going to be transformed into a real buzzing downtown over the next few years, and they're calling this project the Blaine Town Center. And I gotta tell you, I've never seen a suburban project quite this ambitious in all of my years doing real estate. So where exactly is this going to happen? Well, the Blaine Town Center is going to sit between 105th and 109th. So if you know this area, Davenport's the road behind Target and Kohl's that kind of runs parallel to 65 and then to stretch all the way almost over to Radisson. This is of course just to the north side of the National Sports Center, where you've probably already been noticing they've been taking out a bunch of old buildings. They've taken out some of the soccer fields from the north side of the Sports Center. So the development is already happening. So what are they actually building? Well, before we dive into that, do me a favor. I know you probably forgot. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, leave us a comment, do all those good things. It would really mean a lot. All right, so let's break it down, starting with the sports and entertainment stuff, because these are really going to be the anchors for the whole thing. At the center of this project is going to be a multi-purpose stadium that's primarily going to house a semi-pro baseball team, and they haven't announced the name yet, but I've been told we should think that it's kind of a St. Paul Saints-esque type of a baseball stadium. I did also just hear from a city council person that they're hoping to have the first pitch happen out of the new stadium spring of next year, so they're going to be having to move very quickly, and hopefully we'll hear some news on the name very soon. There's also going to be a multi-use field house planned for all kinds of different sports for this area, and if you've been to the National Sports Center, you know Blaine's already got a ton of sports tourism, and so these new facilities are supposed to build on all of that. But it's not just regular sports, they're also adding an adventure park with all kinds of different recreational activities, including year-round pickleball facility, which if you aren't familiar, that's become a huge thing in the Twin Cities. Also, they're going to be adding a new golf entertainment type facility, which is essentially a Topgolf. However, I'm told that it's going to be a different brand, but essentially the same type of thing, and that'll be right off of 109th. Now, since the National Sports Center does host the USA Cup and other huge soccer tournaments for this area, they've definitely put a lot into the hotel plans as well. The housing and hotel plans here are just as impressive. They're going to be building a high-density multifamily residential building that'll bring hundreds of new residents right into this downtown core. Plus, they're building a multi-story hotel and a secondary hotel annex for those visitors, and this makes total sense since the National Sports Center already brings in an estimated 4 million visitors every single year. Currently, those visitors are going to be primarily staying in places like Maple Grove or Roseville because Blaine really doesn't have the infrastructure to keep it all in-house. And then that brings me to the commercial things that they're doing. So this is where it's going to get really interesting. First, there's going to be various sports medical facilities, which is going to be an obvious fit for what's going on in this area. Then they're creating spaces for retail, restaurants, and more offices. So there's going to be a food hall with all kinds of dining options. If you live in Blaine, you know that there's just not enough good restaurants in the city right now for the volume of traffic that comes in. So the town center is fixing that by creating spaces specifically designed for restaurants that wouldn't normally come to a typical suburban strip mall type of location, and which are also going to have enough capacity to serve thousands of people at a time. And then get this, they're also adding community areas with an open air plaza and park spaces, plus parking structures to handle all of the cars. And one thing I really like is just how walkable this is going to be. So visitors will be able to come, park their car in one space, they can have a meal, they can do entertainment or whatever they're doing in that downtown core, all just by walking. But here's the deal, this huge project obviously isn't going to be happening overnight, so let's take a look at what the timeline is expected to look like. So the transformation has already started, so there's going to be bulldozers on site and buildings that have already been coming down, so it's been pretty wild to see. But getting to this point did take years of planning, and it's going to take several more years to get everything finished. The planning process for something massive is crazy complex. They had to do this thing called an alternative urban area-wide review, which sounds kind of boring, I know, but that was available for public comment through May of last year. Then a revised version had a public meeting held in July of last year, and all of the environmental planning and review stuff is obviously super important, even if it's not very exciting. The Blaine City Council has already given the thumbs up for $34 million in tax abatement bonds just for the stadium portion, and there's going to be more public hearings scheduled, including one coming up. But here's something a lot of people don't realize is the city has been quietly buying up properties for this development for years. So just last August, Blaine bought a warehouse in the area for $3.99 million. That was just one of the purchases though. They've been scooping up old warehouses and commercial buildings over the past decade to put this all together. Construction is now kicked into high gear with infrastructure work that began in September and October, and then even just last month they were knocking down additional buildings, moving dirt to get ready for the infrastructure for the whole downtown project. Phase 1 is going to primarily focus on those sports facilities, so that'll be the semi-pro baseball stadium, the golf and entertainment areas, and the pickleball facilities. these are going to immediately draw people to that area and kind of establish it as a destination for the North Metro. Then the following phases will be adding the hotels, the housing, the restaurants, and the office spaces. So doing it in phases lets them work based on what's working and what's not and get that community feedback. So how did they finance $750 million worth of development? That definitely took some creative thinking with both public and private money. So the public financing portion includes $34 million in tax abatement bonds that are specifically for that stadium. The city is also using what they're calling internal borrowing from existing funds to buy properties when they become available. That's going to be pretty smart because it'll let them act really quickly when those opportunities pop up. They're also planning to establish a tax increment financing district, or TIF for short. Now, if you're not familiar with this, I definitely wasn't either, but it's basically that when property values go up because of all of this development, then that extra money gets put back into the projects instead of going to the city's general funds. So I guess it kind of creates a cycle where the investment leads to more investment. The city's also trying to get approval for a special 3% tax in the district on food, lodging, and event tickets. So this would create some ongoing revenue to support that area, similar to what you're going to see in other entertainment districts. The National Sports Center already brings in about 4 million visitors per year, as we said, and so that also generates another $80 million in economic impact every year. So that's obviously a ton of people coming to Blaine, but right now, instead of those visitors going to other cities to spend their money there for hotel and lodging, restaurants, and all of the things, their hope is that they can keep a lot of that revenue in the city of Blaine. So what does all this mean for people who actually live in the city of Blaine versus those tourists coming in? Well, Blaine's trying to do something that very few suburbs have successfully pulled off, which is creating a whole new vibrant downtown from scratch. And it's definitely been a challenge, and it's going to completely change this community. But most of the residents that I've talked to are honestly super excited about it, and they're finally getting some of the amenities that they've been hoping for, and new restaurants, things like that. Also, it's going to kind of relieve some of the other city services when so many new people come to town for those busy weekends. That said, obviously not everyone is thrilled. Some residents don't love the increase in the population of Blaine as it's been growing, and some are worried that projects like this are going to cater more towards those tourists than the people that actually live in the city. They're asking whether this massive investment will actually benefit everyday Blaine residents, or if it's mainly designed to attract visitors. That's obviously a fair question that city developers and the city council have trying to address as they move forward. So there's what's going on in Blaine with the Blaine Town Center project. If you want to stay updated on more developments just like this, find great places to live, things to do, and real estate market insights, you can just make sure to subscribe. And of course, look for my information in the description down below. Don't hesitate to reach out if you're thinking about buying or selling. My name's Joe Carmack. I appreciate you for watching, and I'll see you next time.